Okay.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your patience, and welcome to this Book Boon webinar with Jason Allan Scott on leading through a crisis. We have people from all over the place: UK, Romania, Canada, South Africa. It's fantastic. Thank you all for attending. Today, again, we will be listening to Jason Allan Scott give his presentation on leading through a crisis. So a very timely topic. And the webinar will proceed as follows. We will have Jason give his webinar. Then at the end, we'll have a Q&A section. So be sure to ask any questions up in the question box up there, and we can have those asked at the end. Before we start, just like to remind you all about Book Boon. We are an online publisher that does corporate learning. We do this through ebooks, audio talks, and online courses and webinars like you're seeing today. So thank you all so much for coming. And now I will hand it over to Jason Allan Scott.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. And exactly as Matthew said, I feel like this couldn't be more timely. I'm going to work you through it. What I'm going to do now is to switch over into the presentation. Please let me know in the chat box if you all seeing it. I think we should be good. Otherwise, Matthew will let me know if it's not coming through. But if memory serves, it's as simple as clicking this button, and that button. And then going here, let me know if that worked.
I don't see anything yet. Could you share your screen, perhaps?
Yep, that's what I pressed. So sharing screen, press share. Is that working? Can you see the... Where's the hat, says Matt. Well done, Matt. I do normally wear a hat. I was in a bit of a rush today. Can everyone see my screen now?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm going to
bring it back. Do you want to try sharing your screen one more time?
Yep. So I'm now pressing the your entire screen button. I'm pressing the share button. It's now showing my face again. Can anyone up? I see some not yet, some no's. I don't know what it's doing. Pressing the button, pressing the share button. I don't know why that is not. So that's not coming up for anyone. No one can see my presentation. Is that right?
No, not again.
Okay, so we have a secondary choice, thank goodness, which is I've just sent you, Matthew, the link. If you click on it.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time. Let me see. I'm having a hard time downloading it, actually.
Ah, okay.
It looks like you're sending it from
my email. I wonder why that's not working. So it's normally just share your screen, click the button.
Could you send as an email attachment?
Yes, I'm sure I can do that. Give me a second. Let me go here. Okay, let's have a little look-see. Murphy's Law. For anyone who doesn't know Murphy's Law, he was a tank driver in the military, and he used to keep going over every landmine that existed. And eventually they came up with this idea that anything that could go wrong would go wrong. It happened to Murphy. So there is the presentation. It's attaching now. And I'm sending it to Matthew.
Then I will try sharing my screen.
Perfect. Oopsie daisy. Okay, let me know if that has arrived at you. That should come through right now. I didn't put a subject line on it just in case that makes any difference. What I will need from you, Matthew, if we're going to do it this way, is that as I read, you're just going to have to click because it'll be on your side. So you'll just have to move it through. That should have pinged over.
I believe we did a similar thing last time.
Yes, correct. Good memory. So it's obviously you. You're the common denominator to what's happening.
Okay, so here we are. I have it now, and then I'm going to share my screen.
Wonderful. Let me know if it works this time for you.
And then can you see it, Jason?
No, I can't. I was just about to say, I now on the other side, I can still see you and myself. I can't see the changeover of screen. Serjan, forgive me if I'm butchering your name, says there might be a problem with Chrome. And Alex has said, Chrome doesn't work for me using Edge now. Edge also, interesting. I'm also using Chrome, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm wondering if, I don't know, Matthew, are you using this through Chrome?
I'm also using Chrome, yeah. But I've downloaded the presentation now, and then I'll try sharing that.
Okay. Interesting. This is definitely a first. We do have a third option, should this not work, which is we have a video. So I can send that over, and of course you can click that, and I can just come in for Q&A at the end of that. It's all okay in Kazakhstan. Edge. Oh, I love it.
There you go.
Good to know.
Let's see. If I share my screen here, let's try this. Now you see me, correct?
I see you, yes. So that's worked. That's a good start.
Do you see this?
No.
It's ironic that this is leading through a crisis, so you're actually living your
Hence I'm keeping calm, controlling what I can, acknowledging what I can't.
People are going to start thinking this is part of the.
This is part of it. This is absolutely not part of it.
Very meta.
Very exactly. Let's see.
Oh wait, okay, here we go. I have a little screen.
Perhaps? There we go. Yes, there she is.
Do you see the presentation now?
Yes, we can. I think you just have to make your screen large, if memory serves. But I can see it. Everyone else, can you all see it? Vicky says, yay. That's great news. We have a yes from Annabelle. Fantastic. Okay, so that's yes, says Sean Ray. Great. Excelente. Yes. Saki Pretorius. That is a great name, Saki. I haven't heard that since my South African days. Can you make it full screen? Is that possible, Matthew?
Let me see.
Because that might just make it easier for everyone.
I don't think so. Am I getting any advice in the
audience? No, we've just got yeses. We just got people saying yes. Nothing on full screen. Okay, so much like anything, maybe we should try and use what we have. I know when I did this, and it did work for me last time, I clicked the presentation, I went to the top corner of the presentation, and there was a take over screen button. Which I don't see on. Have you downloaded this? So it's actually downloaded. It's not coming from a web browser. Okay. I don't see an option. F11 says a few people. Thank you, everyone. Okay. F11. Try F11.
Wow. Well, it got a little better.
It did get Alt plus Enter to go full screen. It says Burtis Sharp or Scarp.
Oh, let me un-F11 it and then Alt Enter. That did nothing. So I guess this
double click on the presentation will work full screen, says Georgiana. I'm definitely learning some things, people, so thank you so much. Yeah. Elena says that's already better.
Nothing happens when I double click. So I think F11 is our best.
Okay, so we'll go with that. Can we do it that we don't have the screens? Because everyone, can you all just see the presentation, or are you still seeing Matthew and I in any sort of small windows? If you can let us know. Do you just see the presentation, or do you also see Matthew and myself in any sort of small screens? We have no yeses or no's, so that's interesting.
Neither.
Okay. So Matthew, can you just, seeing the presentation? Yes, only presentation. We'll see the, fantastic. Alrighty, let's all go then. Let's move forward, not take up any more of your valuable time. This is How to Lead Through a Crisis by myself, Jason Allan Scott. And I have used this theme because I feel there's nothing more scary than to be caught out in the wild with nothing but a tent. And that always feels like a crisis. If we can move to the next slide, please, Matthew. Our ability to navigate change is directly correlated to the meaning that we make about what happens to us. The true power we have is the power of choice. Now, that is pretty much the entire presentation. If you remember nothing else, this is the thing I want you to take away that's most important. Important to realize what we have control over and what we don't have control over. and that we have the power to choose meaning making. And we're going to go into that into the presentation. But that is the biggest piece of the puzzle that we'll be taking through today. As a leader, and a leader is very important because they are the ones that set the emotional tone and often the example in both good times and bad times. It is important for a leader to be able to move you through a time of crisis. But before we go any further, I'd like to reframe what that means. If we can move to the next slide, please. I want us to talk about the word crisis. I'd like us to reframe it as the famous American president did. Extra points to those people who know the president was, who said the word crisis was Chinese for change, for opportunity. Now, the truth is, we've learned, thanks to things like Google Translate, that is absolute nonsense. However, it gave the Americans hope. It gave the world hope to believe that crisis meant change, that it meant opportunity. But what it also does for us is it helps de-escalate the negative power of the word crisis. What I'd like to go into now are the 5 tips to help people navigate change, because we've changed the word crisis, scenarios. Next slide, please. The first is to be present, to let people express their emotions, to make people feel safe for them to say what's really going on for them, to allow them to be heard, to know that their voice matters. Anyone from South Africa knows the expression sawubona. And what sawubona means is I see you. And the response to sawubona is shakobe, which means because you see me, I am heard. Because you see me, I can be. There's also a Zulu community idea called Ubuntu, which is when you take someone into the middle of the village and everyone speaks well of them. It allows them to be seen, it allows them to be heard, and it allows them to feel like they matter. All these things will come up again throughout the presentation, so don't worry, this is just me foreshadowing or seasoning what's coming up. In number 2, be connected. To state that you're here for them as a leader, that you're in this together, that you'll move through this together, that everyone belongs together. Number 3, to explain meaning making. We're going to go over this, but the importance of this is that everyone understands the stories they make up about their experiences, that the truth is that we can change these stories. And that's what's important about meaning making. Number 4, to choose a positive future, to talk about how everyone would like to feel once the grieving is over, once the crisis, which has led to change, is over, once the pain has lessened. And number 5, to choose a path together. Andre has said, you just opened one of the best subjects that exists, Ubuntu. I 100% agree, and I'm glad you took away that. Moving next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Here are the 2 important ideas I want you to think about. To the making of good meaning. In addition to your internal choice, external tools can come in handy on how we do this. You see, our ability to navigate change is directly correlated to the meaning that we make about what happens to us. And the way that we make meaning is based on the stories that we tell ourselves about what happens to us. Now, the meaning that we make will determine whether our experience is positive or negative. It'll empower us or devastate us. And I'd like to give you an example. Lots of things are changing. Lots of short notice client requests and deadlines. Meaning making option 1. Oh my gosh, this is so stressful. I'm emotionally exhausted by this. It's all too much. Well, the result of this meeting is missed deadlines, incomplete work, stress for self, and those that have to deal with missed deadlines, incomplete work, low quality of work, no fun for anyone, and certainly no ease, grace, joy. Meaning making option 2. Yippee. Does anyone even say yippee anymore? Yippee! Change means movement and growth and a chance to really shine and pace myself. I will show up fully to serve our awesome tribe, our community, our group. How great that I get to tap into my brain to become even more clear, to find even more solutions as I focus on the outcomes that I want to create. Result of this meaning empowerment, the choice of how to respond versus compulsively reacting, the ease, grace, joy state that we all look to what we work better in, to support of self and others, to shine my light, to honor our company values, to choose my reality. Whatever is happening outside or inside of us is still going to happen. That's a fact. The power that we have is in choice. What meaning would you like to make? Next slide, please. The factors that count, and this is very, very important. Safety, belonging, and mattering. If you, again, if you're not in a company, if you leave your company, if you don't want to work in a company, if you end up being nothing but a father, a husband, a wife, a leader in your family or community, then this is important. Safety plus belonging plus mattering equals trust. Safety. Our behavior depends primarily on the beliefs of a sense of our safety, a sense of our belonging, and that we matter in the grand scheme of things will make us feel safe. Belonging. Belonging means creating an environment where we all feel like a tight-knit tribe. We're all equal and we're all moving in the same direction to reach our goals. Mattering. Mattering means each of us contributes individually in a unique way. Next slide, please. Now, this slide is about the two states we are often jumping in between. The critter state and the smart state, or as I like to call it, the glow state. Now, before we understand this, it's important to understand that we crave safety, belonging, and mattering, that they're essential to our brain, our ability to perform at work, at home, and in life. The greater the feeling of safety, both emotional and physical, the more we'll take risks, the more chances we'll take, the greater the feeling of connection with others, or the feeling that we're in this together, that we belong together, the greater the feeling that we personally matter and make a difference and are contributing to the greater good. Then the greater there is of the success of the company, the relationship, the family, the team, and the individual. In every communication, in every conflict, we are subconsciously either reinforcing or begging for safety, belonging, and mattering, or a combination of them all. It's neurological, it's primal. There is nothing you can do to override or change this subterranean, subconscious programming, as much as you may try. Safety means creating an environment where you can take risks and stretch and grow. Is it safe to take risks at your company, in your family, in your day-to-day life? Belonging means creating an environment where we all feel like a tight-knit tribe. We've said this. It makes you feel equal, like you're rowing in the same direction in the same boat to reach the same goals. In South Africa, where I grew up around gangs, and gangs will literally kill to stay in the same tribe. That's how powerful this thinking is. Mattering. Mattering means each of us contributes individually in a unique way. We all make a difference. We're all appreciated and publicly acknowledged. Does your company culture work this way? Before I go into these two states, I just want you to really understand what we're talking about. I want you to ask yourself the following questions. Safety, belonging, mattering is already prevalent in your life and company. But let's see where. Let's do a quick quiz. For each behavior below, in other words, what I'm about to say, I want you to tell me what the person is craving. Flight, fight, freeze craves what? Do they crave safety? Do they crave belonging? Do they crave mattering? Talking about us versus them craves what? A victim complaining craves what? Perpetually seeking recognition in the company or family or tribe or clan craves what? If you answered the first one safety, the second one belonging, the third mattering, and the fourth mattering, you were right. But the truth is you could have mixed up any of these and you would have been right. It's a trick question. Don't blame me for that. Safety plus belonging plus mattering equals trust. Now, what has this got to do with the critter state and the smart state or the glow state? Leaders must behave in a way that makes employees feel that they are safe, that they belong and they matter. And doing so will help them shift out of their fear-driven critter state, where all decisions are based on what they perceive will help them to just survive. A critter is an American word, as far as I understand it, to mean small, scared, and constantly in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn behavior. Where a smart state is where you can innovate, collaborate, feel emotionally engaged, and move the company forward. This isn't just true of employees. It's true of clients, associates, spouses, friends, children. At our emotional core, we all want safety, belonging, mattering. To influence anyone, we must influence emotionally. The art and science of influence is more complex than it can be fully explained in a short talk here for Bookboon. Although I have done a book on persuasion, which is available on Bookboon, so do go check that out. I think it's an audiobook. However, I will share some insights with you that will help you and help other people move from a critter state to a glow state. Next slide, please, Matthew. How do you boost the experience of safety, belonging, and mattering within your company? Do what my super successful clients do. They do it by a certain set of behaviors. The first is an engaging mission, vision, and value. They draw people together for a greater cause. It helps them see that where they're headed together. They set a code of conduct as a tribe. They also use individual development plans. And this shows how we matter and how we belong, how our company sees us as a long-term investment. And what does that lead to? The feeling of safety. What about cultural rituals? We work with Hard Rock Hotels, for example, who did things like the rock star of the week, the rock star of the day, high fives, shout outs, public appreciations, reinforcement, mattering, and tribal customs count. Right now, we're in a virtual world. Why not do an email out talking about who's done great work, who needs to be acknowledged, what work has moved the needle in your company? Transparency is more important than ever. Accountability structures, open communication, fairness, to say we're safe, we belong, we matter. We know where the performance is or where the performance bar is, and we know how to jump over it. Next slide, please. Leadership effectiveness. Desire is the first step towards leadership effectiveness. That fantastic, intangible drive and passion for excellence, for being all that you can be, is what makes a remarkable leader. I often get asked, what is a remarkable leader? What is it to be remarkable? If you literally break up that word, someone who is worthy of remark. In other words, someone that's worthy to be talked about, to be spoken about, to be used in a conversation, preferably in a way that is positive. There are 5 factors that will help you access your leadership effectiveness when you interact with others. And these will help you to channel your drive and passion towards results. Next slide, please. These 5 factors are focus. The single most important practice in ensuring you are leading effectively is focus. And I like to break this up. The F stands for follow. The O stands for one. The C stands for course. The U stands for until. And the S, successful. Follow one course until successful. Focus. 2, clarity. Being truly clear means we need to take the time to discover what we need, to articulate it clearly, and to be sure the other party understands your communication. Number 3, accountability. Accountability starts at the top, and this is where many companies struggle. Next is influence. Real influence is about empowering others. I often talk to influencers and I say, real influence is when leaders create leaders, not leaders create followers. Number 5, sustainable results. Sustainability is about creating win-win agreements with ourselves and others. And I've used a quote by Peter Sanjay, which is, if any organization is to be truly effective, it must be at its heart a learning organization. Next slide, please. A learning organization has 5 main features, and I've used these images and as a way for you to remember them. First of all, if any organization is truly effective, it must be at its heart a learning organization. Please remember that. I mentioned certain things over and over because I'm trying to drum it in, but it's so important because no matter what you do, if you're constantly reminding yourself that you need to be learning, then these different features are just something you're adding into your everyday learning. The first is systems thinking, and understanding that all parts affect the whole, and changes in any one part will likewise affect the whole. The best way to solve problems is to understand each problem in relation to the overall ecosystem and whole of the company. The second is personal mastery, the commitment by the individuals at the company to be at the process of ongoing learning and development. The third is mental models, the willingness to challenge internal theories, norms, behaviors, and values. Recently, we were talking to Sarah Blakely, who started the Spanx underwear chain, and she said she often asks her employees, "What would you do if I wasn't here?" This gives them a chance to challenge the norms, to challenge the behaviors that already exist, to challenge the values of the company, to make sure that they're strong. But for them to work, they need to have a shared value, a shared vision. A shared vision motivates the team to learn as it creates a common identity that creates a focus and energy for learning. The most successful visions build on the individual visions of the team members, of each of these individuals that I've put into the slide. Next slide, please. Or into that image, I should say. And number 5 is team learning. It gets its own slide. Team learning, teams that share their learning processes openly see the problem-solving capacity of the organization improve greatly. Open communicative cultures will help ongoing dialogue and discussion grow faster. This is often also called a smart tribe. And a smart tribe can only exist in a flexible culture where learning and communication are consistent. Next slide, please. Mission, vision, and values. Too often we walk into a company and find wordy mission statements moldering on the wall in a great frame. When on the mission, vision, and values are stale or not aligned or not communicated in an enticing, sexy way, it not only does not activate the reward network in our brain, it activates the pain network. People feel a lack of belonging. They feel low social status in comparison with others who work for the same organization who possibly feel alive and aligned. They may feel betrayed if there's a conflict between what they signed up for and what is happening between a stated value and the reality of what's going on. They might feel flat or misaligned if they don't link up with the vision, mission, and values, don't inspire them. They might feel hurt. This becomes extremely apparent when there is a crisis. If the individuals aren't compelled and vested in the mission of the company, when a crisis occurs, they won't feel compelled to push through. It's essential that your team lives to its company mission, vision, and values, which means leadership must model them and reinforce them constantly. If the behaviors of an organization leaders are not aligned with its values, you'll often first see anger and resentment, and then apathy in team members. We find some people might not be able to become profoundly aligned with other people. They become profoundly unaligned. They forget the potent mission, vision, and values. The truth is, crises aren't always inevitable. Leaders must empower our teams to push through each crisis to give them empowerment. And this is always based on trust, safety, belonging, and mattering. If the team trusts you as their leader and you have provided the tools and they trust themselves to push through, the crisis may not be avoidable, but the results will not be crippling. Ask yourself, how are you empowering your team to move through a crisis? Next slide, please. I'd like to ask you some questions that you can take away from this presentation. Good leaders meet weekly during a crisis. We've proven this. We've had conversations with various companies all over the world during this period of time who obviously are working remotely, much like many of you, if not all of you. And what we've learned is that the more weekly meetings you can have as a group and as individuals, the better the company does to navigate through a crisis. And the truth is, great leaders ask the right questions at the right time. Next slide, please. One of my favorite cartoons of all time has an elephant in a room answering the phone saying, "It's the elephant." "Once I addressed the elephant, we were able to kick him out the room," said Sheryl Sandberg. For those who don't know Sheryl, definitely check out Sheryl. This is a great thing, which is to talk about the things everyone's thinking about, worrying about, but maybe not saying. As a leader, it is your job to bring up the elephant. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if this company is going to make it through this quarter if we don't hit sales. What will that mean for the company? Layoffs, redundancies, furloughs. But we will get through this together if everyone works together. We will be having one-on-ones offline to talk about this and how this might affect your position, your leadership, your community, and your families. That is a simple way to deal with a potentially crisis-forming moment. Address the elephant. Kick him out the room. Great leaders ask the right questions at the right time. How do they do this? They do this by taking the temperature of the room and kicking the elephants out. Talking as if everything is normal and that they don't notice the changes and problems is a great way to destroy trust and alienate your team. Whether the issues are mainly facing your company or a global crisis affecting everyone, you need to say how you're feeling. You need to find out how they're feeling and take those issues head on. Let your people vent. You need to understand what's stressing people out at work or personally related to the crisis. They might be worried about a sick family member. Others might be worrying about how they're going to pay the bills, how they're going to get through this. They might be afraid of layoffs or the company's future. The great leader Nelson Mandela was once asked, "What makes you such a great leader?" And he pointed his father, a tribal chief. And he said, "My father would wait for everyone in the community to speak. He would listen, and then he would begin to ask questions." This is a great trait of a great leader. To open up these discussions, try asking things like, what are your biggest worries or concerns right now? How are you feeling right now? How do you feel about our company's current prospects? By asking these questions, you want to try and do this on a video call, obviously. Try and watch their body language. Look for signs of discomfort. Are they withdrawing from the screen, moving towards the camera? Ask questions to get them to open up. Regardless of how you feel, be brave. It is better to get these feelings of discomfort out in the open than leaving it to speculation and false narratives that might accumulate over time. Next slide, please. This is an important slide. Of course, Matthew will send this at the end of the thing, but these are the questions you should be asking your team. Biggest worries, how are you feeling? How do you feel about the company's current prospects? And again, don't just listen to the words, look at the body language of every single person that you speak to. Next slide, please. The important thing you're trying to do is to shift their mindset, to remind them of their purpose. Do they understand why they are important, why their work is important? If they say they do, ask them to describe it back to you. How do you think your work impacts our team and our company? Next slide, please. Always be clear and accountable. Remember, this is vitally important because it helps with safety, belonging, and mattering. Ask them what helps them to feel better. What helps them to manage their stress? Ask them what's their favorite part of their job and why is that? Ask them when do they feel most productive and motivated when working. By writing this down, you can simply repeat it like a recipe for your favorite meal. For those who have good systems, encourage them to use them as much as needed. Ask them to share it with other members of the team. Be clear about what you're trying to do and always give someone accountability. Next slide, please. Work leading in a crisis is hard. The truth is, no one said it would ever be easy. It requires you to manage your stress, to be strong for your team, look directly at some of the ugliest problems your team may ever deal with, and to be transparent. By being transparent and involving your team, you'll build trust with them and often find better solutions than you would if you were trying to figure everything out on your own. I have a mantra that we use in my company, which is when in doubt, look about. Ask questions to uncover what is important or what is not important. Who is the elephant in the room? Be open to having tough discussions in a crisis. What if I don't have the answers is a question that often gets asked to me. While we all hope to get good answers and ideas, there's always going to be a time when we don't have the answers or the questions. Feel free to allow others to ask questions and others to answer questions, or to say, I don't know, I'll come back. Next slide, please. Again, sometimes you won't have a good answer. Tell them you don't. Be transparent. Tell them you'll come back with one. Ask them if they have an answer in mind, or how would they deal with it if they were in your position. Involve them in the solution. Former president and chairman of 3M Marketing, for those that know it, William L. McKnight, often would say, I found the best answers by asking people the same questions. He believed it was a manager's duty to ask questions. In fact, his quote was, as our business grows, it becomes increasingly necessary to delegate responsibility, to encourage men and women to exercise initiative. This requires considerable tolerance from me, but seems to work again and again. The truth of all of it is just to tell the truth and be transparent, to be clear and accountable. Next slide, please. That brings us to the end of this presentation. I hope you've taken from it that leading in a crisis is hard, and that it's going to take a lot of work from you, a lot of honesty, a lot of bravery, a lot of patience. But as someone that has lived through a multitude of crises, I can tell you, safety, belonging, and mattering are the recipe to leading through a crisis. To know what you can change, to know what you can't, and to have the wisdom to act accordingly. Thank you very much. I am open to your questions. Thank you, Matthew.
And thank you, Jason. And thank you all for dealing with our technical difficulties. Very nice. So do we have any questions for Jason? We have no questions as of yet. So if you guys want to take your time to think of some questions you'd like to ask Jason. Jason, from my end, have you seen any organizations that have really handled the crisis of the past year well? And have you seen anything sort of in common with all of those organizations?
Absolutely. If we look at things like Coinbase, Facebook, Zapier, Zappos, Airbnb, and who's the other one we were reading about the other day? American Express. The first thing they did is they looked to see how do they keep companies working, and they went to software. They were transparent about where they were, about what might happen with the company. Obviously, something like American Express, which has 75 million users, which are small, medium, and businesses, really struggled to get through the, thank you, Giovanni, to get through the pandemic. They immediately said, let us use software to collaborate. Let us use software to bring us together. Of course, we had Zoom at the time. Facebook took it to another level. Facebook created something called Facebook Teams, where they could collaborate together. Microsoft did the same thing. Immediately, Microsoft said, I want you to stop worrying about where you work from. They went 100% remote, allowing people to work from anywhere they wanted, not just work from home, but work from anywhere, allowing people to take opportunities within other countries, other areas, moving further and further away from HQ. They were transparent about where they stood. They reminded everyone that everyone's job was important to the greater landscape of what they were creating. Coinbase, which is a startup which has done incredibly well within the crypto investing space, immediately went and said, tech isn't the answer, our people are the answer. Every one of you does something great, and immediately started to do what's called an upvote, or talk about different staff members and say how great they were, and asked other team members to upvote them to show their appreciation for that person's action, for that person's importance. So this was something like an Ubuntu, which we spoke about earlier. They created that using software, which is a beautiful thing. Microsoft did the same thing, which is incredible, whether you like Microsoft or don't. Controversial.
Very good answer. So we have a couple questions here. And I'm just going to bring them up on the video. How to deal with trust and trust with test. Is it mistrust, or we only have ask and guide through answers?
Excellent question. Trust is something you earn. I'm sure we've all heard this. It's not something you initially give. I am guilty of giving trust first and then waiting to see. There's a great American expression, Americans on this chat, which says, I will give you the rope. We can either play cowboys and Indians together, inappropriate, but cowboys together. So please forgive me if that was inappropriate to native or indigenous people. Or it's enough rope to hang me. Now that's when you just give trust and you wait to see what happens. The other side of that, which is what most leadership manuals and trainings teach, is to test trust, to give people the opportunity through projects, through accountability partnerships, through a small series of events with time deadlines and understanding the parallels of success. What do you need to do? When do you need to do it by? How do you need to do it? You notice the transparency there that we talked about earlier. So that's probably the best way to gain trust, to give trust. And yes, unfortunately, most people will test trust and give more trust as they pass through the test process.
Very good. We have another interesting question here from Samira. How do you lead through a mental fatigue crisis affecting 60% of the team, especially with remote working? This is a very timely question.
Absolutely. And something we're seeing more and more. I mean, Zoom fatigue, webinar fatigue, remote working fatigue. A lot of fatigue comes from the lack of communication and collaboration. It comes from the lack of sharing tools. It comes from the lack of sharing stories. We know this because we've seen it in things like Psychology Today. We've seen various educational companies and academics try and deal with this. What you need to do is start incorporating the things you would have if you were still in one office. What about watch with me parties where you all watch Netflix and watch a certain show and talk about how that felt? What about drink events where you might break people off into teams, much like you would if you had a party at your own, I know I say party very strangely, so forgive me, where you have a party at the office and you know certain groups would go off and have chats. Create an opportunity, not just with your work, but to create social gatherings that allow for that collaboration, that cooperation, that communication within community. There's also an opportunity with this to take it offline, to do phone calls, old school, talking voice to voice, face to face, person to person. Create tribes, create projects outside of work that can be fun to a community. See if there's any commonalities. Maybe some of them are chess players, drafts players. All of this, of course, can now be created through the internet, through screen share. Maybe, again, there's people that are watching a certain TV show together. Maybe you want to make that an exercise. The Japanese are incredibly good at this. Companies like Sony, companies like Nintendo, they have gaming off-site. In other words, off our general work principle. They have Facebook has a hackathon. Once a week, people get together to try and work on a common project separately, which allows them to try and bring some fun back into remote work. It takes away the dredge and drag of I'm doing the same thing every day, looking at a screen. It's so familiar and it's so inhumane in many ways. I'm basically imprisoned in my place, working through a screen. Find ways to take it off that. Like we said, phone calls, games, Facebook games, Oculus games, PlayStation games, Nintendo games, Netflix watch parties. There's so many tools now to use. There's even board games that we've spoken to a couple of companies that work together doing these board games where they get to do something fun and it's part of their work day. It just allows them to separate, but also to come together on something very different that takes away this kind of idea of we just work as a team. And that will create fatigue. That will stop the pleasure principle that we need in our brain from being activated. That will bring us from a glow state into a crisis state.
Fantastic answer. We have another interesting question here. Hi, Jason. That was really useful. Can I ask about accountability? This comes up within my organization. How does a leader or leadership team demonstrate this better, more visibly? Or in other words, what do you think good accountability looks like in an organization?
It's an excellent question. One of the greatest investors of all time, hedge fund investors, just to be clear, is Ray Dalio. Anybody that's in that space will know about Ray. And Ray is incredibly good with accountability. That is kind of one of his, and he's got like a system with polka dots where he will have someone be accountable for someone else and vice versa. And that will encourage trust of either partner. He creates project guidelines for them where they work together on a project, whether it's already integral to the business or it's something on the side like a research. And Each person will be able to add a colored dot to their person to say what they were strong with and what they were weak with, or what they could help to improve. Red dots were things like EQ, yellow dots were IQ, green dots was completion, orange dots was procrastination. And it was a simple card system so everyone could see it, so transparency, and they could see where they were really strong depending on how many dots they got from their partner. And other people who had worked with them or knew them could add colored dots to that person's card. Now, of course, we're not working together anymore, so you might need to find another way in which you could have the same thing. Now, what's important to that? It's important that it's clear that it's what you do great and what you can do better, not what you do great and what you do terribly. It's important that it's very clear what is happening, who's accountable to who, and why. If you're accountable to a team leader, why is that person a team leader? Will that be revolved? That person's a team leader for this week or this month or this project, but then we're going to swap it. This also stops something which was an experiment in the 60s, the prisoner warden experiment, where by making one person a leader, they become a leader, inverted commas, for those who are not watching my face, and the other becomes the prisoner. In other words, I have to do what this person says, and that person will take advantage of their power by making me do what they want. But if that person knows that at some point the warden will become the prisoner and the prisoner will become the warden, then there's almost a certain play of, I'm going to give a little bit extra because I know I'm going to be in their position soon. And that changes things. So there's a lot of writing about this. There's a great TED talk, I would look it up, with Ray Dalio talking about his color dot system. But really what you want is a clear containment. You want to know what's happening, where it's happening, who it's happening with, who's responsible to whom for how long, and to remind people that this will revolve. In other words, it's not a fixed position. And then you want to give people a chance to share what they did well and what they could do better.
Excellent answers. I think that's... So far, there's no questions in so far. Everyone, please be sure to download Jason's handout. You can see it up if you click on handouts, or you can download it right there. No more questions, it looks like, from the audience. Jason, thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you all for listening. Be sure to check out any of Jason's awesome books or audiobooks or expert talks on Bookboon. They're some of the best content that we have. And Jason, I will just send it over to you so you can say farewell to the lovely audience.
Thank you, everyone. Sawabona, Shakobe. Thank you for seeing me. I've seen every one of you, and I'm so thankful I got to share this with you. I wish you all well. I wish you patience. I wish you strength. I wish you health. And if you have health, you have hope. And if you have hope, you have everything. Take care.
So long, everyone. Bye-bye.